Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of On the Beat. I'm Tony Olivero here with my fellow basketball beat writer Brett LoGiurato, recapping Syracuse's 63-60 win over William and Mary. It happened earlier today at the Carrier Dome. But first things first, it was another ugly win for the Orange against an inferior opponent. This time though, they only squeaked by with the win. The last 2 minutes there, at times there it felt as if William and Mary was going to escape the dome with a huge upset. But after the game, Coach Boeheim, defended his team and felt that his team still has a ways to go, but he thinks that they are ultimately going to get there. What's your take, Brett? I mean, it's been a early season where Coach Boeheim's kind of jumped off into the long end of the pool, with the overrated comments, backed off kind of jokingly about it the next game, and then today it was a little bit of everything. Where do you see this team right now, and where can they go?
Well, I think Jim Boeheim tells it pretty much like it is after especially after these first 4 games, and he's kind of right in the fact that the difference in this game being so close was that the fact that SU didn't make shots and William and Mary did, and when you shoot 5 of 22 from beyond the 3-point line, it's going to be closer than it should, especially against an inferior opponent like William and Mary. So everyone seems to think that this will turn around, but until they do it, we don't know. So and Jim Boeheim tells it like it is, and he also said that right now this team is not playing very good basketball.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see what happens, but they can't play like this. Despite they had very few turnovers and they won a lot of statistical categories, but they just didn't make shots. And if you don't make shots, it's that simple. You're not going to win.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different thing kind of every game. I think the main thing fans are starting to recognize, and Coach Boeheim recognizes, is that this isn't the number 10 team in the country, far from it. And even with regards to just maybe getting to that kind of a top 10 level soon, I just don't see it happening. There's too many question marks. Fab Melo has done absolutely nothing thus far this season for the Orange, and Bai Musakita has provided solid minutes here and there, albeit against teams that really aren't challenging the Orange defense or offense down low much. So what I take from these first 4 games is I see it being a huge struggle for this team. Next weekend down in Atlantic City, and once again to Big East play, because it's sooner rather than later, much sooner. A lot of fans might think it's pretty early in the season, but I don't know the exact number of games, but 5, 6, 7 games from now, it's only pretty much in a month where Big East play is going to start, and they have absolutely they haven't shown really much at all in the early going here. And I wouldn't be surprised if they lose one, if not both of those games next week in Atlantic City. What do you think has been the weakest part of the team through 4 games, I guess?
Yeah, I have to go with probably Fab Melo, and he's been the biggest disappointment by far, I think, for me so far, and just the fact that he just looks completely lost on both ends of the court. It's really staggering at sometimes, the guys that inferior opponents that are getting in on him and just dominating him on the board, dominating him down low, and he's really struggling on both ends of the court. He's just missing passes, missing dunks, and just little things like that you can't believe this guy was so highly touted coming out. So as we get into Big East play, coming up in a month or so, I have questions about whether if he keeps it up like this like he has against 4 inferior opponents, is he going to see the floor at all?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there are a lot of question marks that Coach Boeheim and everyone's been bringing up early in the season, but I think the long-term question mark is exactly there with how exactly this team is going to look and how they're going to try to challenge opponents down low. Because right now you have a Rick Jackson who still is kind of finding his way. Yes, he had those big rebound games, big point games against some of these opponents, but even today he struggled at times. He didn't really assert himself down low there, wasn't demanding the ball against a team that just wasn't going to stop him. He was missing dunks and layups. So no, you don't have a guy like Arinze Anawaku, who everyone expected Rick to be, even at this point in the season. And then past that, there's just no depth. Bai Musakita really hasn't proven anything because he hasn't played against anybody, and he's even struggled at times. And when it comes to Fab Melo, you hit the nail on the head. He just hasn't done anything against players and front courts from these teams that really shouldn't be giving someone who's the Big East Freshman of the Year pick any trouble at all, and it's giving him a lot of trouble. So that's the long-term question I see that needs to get answered by this SU team, because once they get into Big East play against very physical teams, they're just gonna get eat up down low, and that's pretty worrisome. But back to the game today. Obviously, Coach Boeheim was harping on the missed shots. He said, we just got to make shots, and he's not worried about it. At a certain point, when do you become worried about it?
I think you have to be worried about it now. I mean, just especially against a matchup zone like William and Mary had today. Teams are going to play a lot of, just based off the first 4 games, they're going to play a lot of zone against this SU team, and they're going to challenge them to make shots. And so far, they haven't made shots, and they shot just 30-something% again today, and it was even worse much worse from beyond the arc. And you know, it's we've seen both sides, I guess, of it, and but for the most part, except for the the exhibition victory against Lemoyne, they can't buy anything from beyond the arc. So I think that's the biggest short-term question that needs to be answered, especially coming off last year where you have, and Jim Boeheim's still talking about them, still talking about Andy Rowan, still talking about Wes Johnson. Can they get that guy? Can they find that guy who can knock down 3-pointers for them?
Yeah, William & Mary was daring Syracuse to shoot threes today, just daring, sitting back in that 3-2 matchup zone, occasionally trying to switch it up there and maybe confuse the SU offense there with a little bit of man-to-man. But it was just pretty explicit there. They didn't think SU could make the shots, and SU didn't make the shots. But you mentioned a few different things there. I think the reason why it's so worrisome after these 4 games is there have been those different array of things that they've struggled at. It hasn't been just one thing that might need a quick fix. It's been Fab Mel's providing nothing. No one's hitting any deep shots. The veterans have struggled here and there in different halves, and the freshmen just haven't stepped up in most situations. But the one freshman that did show a little bit more today was Dion Waiters. When talking to Dion after the game, he said, I saw the holes, I saw the gaps from the bench that I could exploit, and that's what I look to do with my kind of attacking style of basketball. There was that one drive he took to the rim where he floated up kind of a little right-hand layup there on the left side. It showed what Dion Waiters was expected to bring to this team even in these games early on. And much like Jim Boeheim said early on after a lot of these games, we wouldn't have won without this guy, X guy or Y guy. Today, if Dion Waiters didn't kind of keep that lead for SU there in the first half, maybe it's a 7-point game with 2 minutes remaining, and then the Carey Dome crowd is even more shocked and scared as to what's going to happen. But now that we mentioned that, they did come back in the end and get the win. They showed that they have a little bit of grit there, pulling away for the win there at the end when they were down. Do you take too much away from that? I mean, after the game, a lot of reporters were asking, how much can you take from showing that you have that kind of that you can do that. It's William & Mary, though. I mean, do you take anything away from that?
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of the players answered how you would expect them to. Like, yeah, you can take something out of it, but it's really hard to do that against an 0-3 team that was the worst team that you've played so far. And I mean, you take a victory out of it, and you're happy, and you move on that it wasn't a total disaster. But I mean, I hope from Coach Boeheim's perspective and from the players' perspectives, they need to learn a lot from these past 4 games as a whole and just improve pretty much in almost every facet of the game. So
that's the thing that's the most astonishing is that it really is every facet of the game. You really can't pinpoint again one thing the team has done so well early on in the year that where they've dominated, because that's what they should be doing against these teams, dominating against opponents in one facet of the game. You bring up a lot of good points there. But we'll leave it off with this, I guess. What most people were expecting after those first 3 games in 5 days was you're going to get 4 or 5 days off. You're going to come back against a William & Mary team where, that guy Rum today hadn't made a field goal the entire year heading into this game into 2 games. Brown, their point guard, is not an offensive threat. As long as you can keep McDowell, from getting open 3 looks, you're going to stay in the game. And they just don't have anyone to challenge Rick Jackson down low. You were expecting domination today against this William & Mary team, and lessons learned thanks to the layoff from the first 3 games, and it just clearly wasn't that. And perhaps it was something even worse with the struggles extending into the second half. So it will be interesting to see. They're heading to AC, Atlantic City, next Friday for the Legends Classic game against Michigan. I think they're opening up with. Will they finally learn those lessons? Coach Boeheim mentioned we're excited to get back into practicing and try to cure some of the errors we've had, but will it happen? And if it doesn't happen, will there be 1 or 2 ugly losses that most people didn't expect? Because the way they're going now, I think me and you both agree that they won't escape Atlantic City with 2 wins like many expected. Anything else you'd like to add on, Brett?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the main question. Will they learn from these 4 games? They're 4-0 right now, but it's a tough 4-0 to go to Atlantic City with, and I think a lot of people still expected them to be undefeated coming out of Atlantic City, and now there are a lot of questions whether that's going to happen or not. And they pretty much have to, like we've both said, improve in every facet of the game, going in with two tough opponents, no matter who they get in the second game, whether it's UTEP or Georgia Tech. But they're going to have two tough opponents next week, and it's going to be a completely different world in Atlantic City, just from the level of competition. So, again, just a lot of questions.
Yeah, and a lot of reporters are mentioning it after the game that last year, Madison Square Garden, that coming out party kind of there against UNC was the thing that got everybody to realize what this team was about on the bigger stage. Some people were wondering, hey, bigger stage next week, you guys going to finally show up to play? But I think if you ask Jim Boeheim, he's not expecting that. And I think that's shown with his words when constantly mentioning Andy and Wes. And, even after the game, last year we had two guys who could make threes.
Mm-hmm.
And, every facet of the game, not just that. I don't think Boeheim's expecting anything similar this year against worse competition.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it for now. Be sure to check back online right now all of your coverage from this afternoon's game, as well as tomorrow online, as we will have even more coverage from both the football game and the basketball game this weekend. There's no print edition of the Daily Orange tomorrow. And again, we will be in Atlantic City down there. I'll be there in Boardwalk Hall for all of your coverage. Again, for Brett, Tony, signing off from 744 Ostrom. Thanks again, guys.